Hi everyone. Today we are talking to Sarah Obser, Head of Sustainability at PFI Hong Kong. PFI Hong Kong is a leading expert in auditing, training, quality, inspection, and certification in the footwear and textile industry. So great to have you here, Sarah. I'm very happy to have you with me today to be able to dig a little bit deeper into the topic of recycled polyester, but also, of course, to get to know you a little bit better and to know who you are and so on. And I actually want to start with that as my first question. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for having me today. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Sarah Obser, as you said, exactly head of sustainability at PFI Hong Kong. So what I do there is really taking care of all the factory audits in terms of social compliance and environmental compliance, and also building sustainability certifications. My background is textile engineering. So I'm even a tailor, so I really learned how to sew garments from scratch. That's how I started with the textile industry. And then because I was very passionate about it, I started really textile technology and then textile management in my master's degree. I'm originally from Germany, and having been involved in the textile industry, I was always very passionate more about the production side and the supply chain. So early on, I went to Indonesia during my studies, even worked in a production site there, and then also went to Bangladesh twice for the German Development Cooperation and worked in projects there on traceability in the supply chain, as well as really on social compliance and productivity in the garment factories. So I think that is also pretty much how I developed this passion for sustainability in general, because having lived in those sourcing countries, I was really exposed to the working conditions as well as also the environmental aspects of the supply chain, and I've seen it with my own eyes, and I really want to drive change in that regard and make a difference.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting and exciting background you have there. You must have experienced a lot. And now I can see from your very lush and green background that you are in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, what not everybody would imagine that Hong Kong can also be so green, but exactly, indeed. I'm in Hong Kong for the last 5 years, having also worked here, for PFI the last 2.5 years, and before that also in sustainability project management.
Okay, so then how about you tell me a little bit about the polyester as a material and why it's a popular and such a liked material these days?
Yeah, sure. I think polyester has really become one of the mostly used fibers in the textile industry next to cotton. And it's been around for more than half a century. I think the reason why polyester is such a popular material and fiber is really that it's very versatile. Because it is a synthetic man-made fiber, you often can adjust the characteristics of the fiber itself. It's really stain resistant and wrinkle resistant. It easily dries, right? That's why we use it a lot also in sportswear these days. And I think it's also very long lasting and durable, because it is synthetically made. So you can really adjust the characteristics and make it fit for exactly the purpose you want it to be.
And it's also fairly blendable, I suppose, as well, right? You can mix it with all different kind of fibers and make it into a completely new material.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we see sometimes polyester as being like core spun, right? So we have polyester at the core and then cotton around it, or also alternatively, you can mix it inside the fabric with other materials. So I think many consumers, they see on the hang tag or the label of a garment that it says often like polyester and cotton mix.
Yeah. Good, but so that's like the positive sides of polyester. So, and I think it's important to remember that there are these positive things about the fiber as well. But lately, it has also been very criticized, and a lot of negative sides of it has kind of surfaced. So, what would you say are the challenges or the negative sides of polyester?
Yes, I think there are two different aspects, right? One is the technical side. So why might it not be used in, like, why do we not want to wear polyester every day, let's say? Because it is not very breathable, right? And it doesn't really take on the moisture like when you sweat. Like, so that is I think something from the technical perspective that has its limitations. But then also in terms of sustainability aspects, yeah, polyester is a bit criticized recently, because in the end, yeah, it is a plastic material, right? It is a polymer and it comes from a non-renewable resource. So it is originating from crude oil that we use for the production. And that, of course, means that it is a resource that can't regrow. Like, we have limited oil resources, and based on studies that I read, we use almost 70 million barrels of oil each year to make polyester around the world. So these are huge numbers. Moreover, also, that means that polyester is not biodegradable. It doesn't decompose, or it takes centuries to decompose. And I think lastly, also, what has also been in the news quite a lot recently is the microfiber pollution that polyester and other synthetic fibers also are linked with. Because as much as we can take care of socially and environmentally friendly production conditions, every consumer is also washing their garments at home. And really, during every washing load, those small fibers, they are shedded into the waterways, and that creates then the ocean plastic, or contributes to ocean plastic pollution.
What are, if we just stay a little bit on the microplastics, because I think that's
Yes.
an important topic. Are there anything that a consumer at home can do to avoid shedding these microplastics
Yes, yeah. So there
while
are
washing?
more initiatives that look into that. So I think washing machine producers, they look into that, but they face the challenge that the fibers are really so small that the filters in the washing machine at the moment can't collect those fibers. But then there is this so-called guppy bag, which I haven't tried it yet myself, but I think it's really promising. And yeah, and that is supposed to really take on all these, or collect all these microfibers, and then you could really dispose them in the trash bin instead of really releasing them into the waterways.
Okay, and so then you put your clothes into to the bag when for washing.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yes, I would love to see the development of that, because I think as a consumer, you really, I mean, when you're aware of this problem, you just want to be able to do what you can about it as well. And if there would be such a simple solution that you can just put your clothes into a bag before washing them, I think that would be really helpful.
I agree. Or even if such filters could be really built into the washing machine, right? Because then in the end, not every consumer is a textile expert and is so aware of that. So I think it also needs support to really just find an easier solution for the consumer in the long term.
Yeah, yes, completely agree. Okay, so then, but then if we go into recycled polyester, what is actually recycled polyester? If you just tell us a little bit about the material.
Yes, sure. So recycled polyester is basically, at the moment, often relying on PET bottles. So it's actually not really necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that we recycle old garments made from polyester fibers into a new garment, but we often use at the moment really PET bottles. We mechanically shred them basically into pellets and flakes, and then we respin them into new fibers. And why is it that we use PET bottles? That is simply because PET bottles are a food grade material, so they have a very high purity, and they are really checked for toxic chemicals as well, because they need to really reach that high level of consumer protection, right? So it's fairly simple to use these PET bottles. And when it comes to recycling used polyester based garments, we still face the challenge that, as we discussed just previously, those polyester garments are often mixed with cotton or with elastane or with other fibers, and that is a challenge that the industry is facing. It's not just so simple to take apart all these different fiber mixes. And while I think there's really a lot of research going on, there's nothing yet really scalable on the market to solve that issue.
Okay, so when you buy a recycled polyester, first of all, can I also ask, does that say in the care label, if you buy a recycled polyester garment, does it say on the care label that it's recycled polyester?
Yes, I've seen it. I don't think I'm not sure whether it is a must, but definitely some big brands, they do show recycled polyester. Okay. Or they would also show the certification, for example, that ensures recycled polyester.
On the hang tag or on the care label, yeah.
So on the hang tag, yes.
On the hang tag, and then I know that PFI has developed this new certification that is looking at the PET bottles coming from the ocean.
So firstly, I want to say that it doesn't claim that it comes from the ocean. We always say ocean-bound plastic or also coastal plastic, just because we're not going out into the ocean with a ship like the Ocean Cleanup Project does it. So that is just to really clarify and not mislead any consumers. I know many brands want to call it ocean plastic, but that for me is really misleading the consumer and saying like we take it out of the ocean. So our aim is really to raise the awareness for preventing ocean plastic. So really looking at the shorelines, at the coastlines or riverbeds for a solution and to prevent that from entering the water streams. So we basically have cooperated with a big recycling factory in China and their collection centers, and we've identified a certain number of coastal collection centers that provide PET bottles, and then we can calculate the percentage of coastal PET versus non-coastal PET that goes into a yarn.
Okay, interesting. And then so then I think we can touch a little bit about the traceability or the transparency part of this supply chain as well. If you are if there are brands out there listening to this and they want to start tracing their recycled polyester supply chain, or they maybe not just trace it, they want to get proper visibility into the supply chain, what should they be thinking about? What challenges might they meet?
Yeah, I think the challenge that I see is firstly quite often that a brand or retailer would simply ask the assembly factory to take care of all that sourcing, like whether it's then the fabric and then also the yarn and the PET flakes, right? So it very much goes like one step at a time, whereas the brand or the retailer doesn't really look into the entire supply chain. So that is like a pattern that I see, and I think that really increases the challenge for traceability, because if you only ask the assembly factory to provide you all the information, then they might not always see the business advantage for that, and it does of course mean that they need to spend some time to gather all that information. So I think if the brand would really try and go one step further to really create a connection and a relationship with all these different stakeholders, then that would really make a big difference from how I see it. Because as far as I know, like even the weaving mill or the knitting mill and the spinning mill, the recycling factory, they are willing to cooperate with the brand directly. I think it's just when it comes to sensitive information like pricing that then there might be some challenges, because you work with different parties and not everybody wants to be transparent about the pricing, right? But when it comes to purely transparency, traceability as of who is involved in the supply chain, I don't see that there are such big challenges. And when you say like what could brands or retailers do and what kind of tips can I give them, I would say really first start with with really making your partners aware of why you want to have that information, right? Why is that important for you? It's not only about pricing and getting a better price, but it's really because you want to take responsibility for your supply chain. You want to listen to your consumers and fulfill their demands as well for more sustainable alternatives, and your product portfolio. So I think, yeah, making your partners aware of the reasons and then also building close relationships with them. I think that will really help you to create more visibility and transparency in your supply chain.
What about if you're a
Mm.
smaller brand and you don't maybe have the resources to really build these relationships as you're talking about with
Yes.
maybe spinning mills and so forth? Maybe you just have a buying office somewhere
Mm.
in Europe and so on, and you don't have a presence in Asia or wherever you might have the production. What do you think can be done then?
Yeah, I think then you can either, of course, rely also on certifications, because especially also when it comes to recycled polyester, right? There are certifications out there that create more visibility and that really trace the material from the spinning mill up to the finished product. Or PFI's certification even goes one step further, and we even look at the collection centers. So we, as one of the certification bodies for such a recycled polyester product, we could really give you that entire information of your supply chain, right? And we're actually doing it without a brand or retailer asking for it. It's for us normal that we take on really being in touch with all these parties along the supply chain. We trace the product, as I said, from the coastal collection centers up to the finished product, and then we could support the brand and retailer in that.
So then I think just to kind of finish off a little bit, I would like to understand how you see the future. Let's say that from 10 years from now, where do you think we are when it
Yeah.
comes to polyester and recycled polyester? How are we consuming it, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I think that's a very exciting question, really, to look down the line like 10 years from now. And I think there are two big changes that will happen and that will also impact the way how we see and use recycled polyester. One is that, as we spoke about it before, the source of recycled polyester, right? It is still mainly PET bottles. And me being very passionate about reducing this plastic pollution problem that we're in at the moment,
Yeah.
I would say that the number of PET bottles hopefully drastically reduce, because you can see how consumers are more aware of it. Like, either they bring their own bottle, like what I see in Asia quite a lot. Like in China, every person has their own bottle and brings that with them. Whereas then on the other end in Europe, I can see, like, also being from Germany, we have a very good recycling system. So we really reuse and like bring back the bottles, right? So I think that in the long run, the number of PET bottles that will be used for recycled polyester, that is then being used for the garment industry, I think that will drastically reduce. And having said that, I think also on the other hand, that the fashion industry is really looking into how can we reuse our own end of life products, basically, or like the products at the end of their life. Yeah, so there are a lot of initiatives that look into recycling. And as much as what I said before, there's nothing like large scale on the market yet, from what I understand, that can really take apart a mix of fibers. So like if you have really mixed with elastane and cotton and polyester and so many more fibers, I do think that that problem will be solved. And at some point in the future, we in the fashion industry, we will also be able to find a solution for our own waste.
Yeah, let's definitely hope for that. I mean, that must be the future. I feel like that we
Yeah,
should be able to take care of our own waste and close the loop as such, and
exactly.
use the waste that we are generating. Because I suppose the bottle waste, that is from the bottle industry, and the bottle industry should be able to reuse that and fully close the circle for
Exactly.
that. And the garment industry should of course recycle its own waste to a closed loop.
Yes.
Good. Anything else that you would like to add before we finish off?
Um, Yeah, I think for me personally, I'm always a fan of Vivienne Westwood's statement, right? Buy less, choose well, and make it last. So I think that is also, of course, always something that the consumers can look into. Really, like, choose what you're buying well, and like really buy when you need it, or also look into secondhand options. And that way we can also reduce the waste problem we have, as well as also when we spoke about microplastics. Think about when you really need to wash something, right? Like, you might not necessarily need to wash something after every time you wear it. So that way also consumers can really make an impact, on the one hand reducing the microplastic pollution, on the other hand also really saving CO2 emissions from all the washing we're doing.
Yeah, that's a very good
Yes.
point, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah, for being with me today and for talking to me about the polyester and recycled polyester. It has been very informative. So thank you so much, and take care in Hong Kong.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, all the best to Sweden as well.